Zanny was Alessandro Olivier. Sorry. It was incredible, and we just want to hear more about what you thought of the presentations of each other. But I think more interestingly, I think it would be great to hear the opinions of Anna. Anna obviously was tremendously involved in all of these. I mean, she was, again, I mentioned, for those that are not here, up to 2 days ago, the Minister of Culture of the country. But she comes from an activist, artist perspective, right? And so, and she continues to do this work. As a matter of fact, she was a member of the Red de Saberes. And she is a member, sorry, don't need it. It was a separation when you were a minister, right? Something like that. So without doubt, both of their work was structured around supporting a lot of the work that you guys are doing over there, right? And as Sandy very much explained, and also Sinead, the intention of the development of these works was how to be supportive of the struggles rather than implement or design something that it was fantastically impossible to come together. Now, in the case of Jan van Heeswijk, for those who don't know her, she's a Dutch artist, but she's certainly not Dutch to me and to many people. In my point of view, and I always introduce it to like that, she is to me the most important artist living today. And I'm not only saying this, many critics tell me so. And she's been the one that has been pushing the boundaries of art for already several decades. I think the best attest of her work is as she was selected together with the celebration, it's 100 years of Duchamp, or what was it, this whole thing, at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, as the artist that pretty much represents Marcel Duchamp today, okay? And the reason is Marcel Duchamp wanted and did, to a certain extent, destroyed the classical conceptions of art. And I think Jane continues to do that and present us with many, many directions on, what is this approach? And I really want to hear your opinions on the work of these, recently graduates on development. So please, it's up to you and take the table. Thanks.
We pass?
I'm sorry for my English. I just arrived a few hours ago, and it's hard for me to express in a clear way in English. So I'm sorry if I need a Miguel to translate some things.
Sure, I'm used to that.
First thing is to say thanks to everyone, because it's been like 3-4 years that we began this work with this market, and like 3 years ago David arrived and gave us the chance to think about in which way a critical studies and actions could make a process in that market that we were a little bit like in front of a wall, and we tried to get other kind of strategies, think about what we could do for a transformation in the way of the surviving of the market that had a lot of pressure like 3 or 4 years ago. These pressures change in the way the politics change and the value of territories change, but the pressure is always there, and we are now like habituated to have a dynamic practice of changing strategies. So the first thing is that this arbitrary group of people that comes from different places, and even in Ecuador, are working together in something that we don't really know what it is and what goal we have. But in any way, we are like surfing all the time to get new strategies in this kind of resistance to the pressure. So this is the first thing. So thank you to a different kind of roles that everyone's playing. And this makes me also like propose a huge question that is deep behind behind all these practices that is not really about the incidence of what we do. That's a normal question in this kind of practice. But what does really what we do has to do with the market's life. This is something we are all the time trying to work with market leaders that in the same time are trying to work about what in which way their leadership reflects or represent the basis on the wishes of these 5,000 or 6,000 workers. So in the last days or months, we had a lot of changes in the market because this Frente de Defensa, that has now 13 years, that it was like a huge union of associations in the last 3 years. 3 months ago, it's been like divided in two groups, completely divided because of the same policies on the land by the city. The city rules decide to really it's not now all over the luxury hotel. It's about cleaning the streets around the market. So this was a pressure since 10 years ago, and now it's a fact that as they need to clean outside, the people inside let's say the huge house divide organizations with the ones that are outside. So Galo, that was the president of the Frente, that was a president from organizations inside the market, lost the elections some months ago, and we have a new a woman that represents the differences between inside and outside, like formals and informals. Even if inside there are so many informals, that outside now to be on the roof is like to be formal in a difference from the street. This makes also something that is interesting, and that I'm saying this because it has to be with what we do. And it's not an answer, but it's some kind of an element to have in mind, is that they are not trying, they are having a new kind of organization that is parallel to the Frente. So the Frente is divided, and there are some meeting outside and others inside. But the leaders that had these struggles that were in the front, they are meeting again, even if they are not leaders from their bases. They are representing fights. So they are meeting not in the market, but from an hour from Quito, in a land where they are cultivating, because they are learning how to work, how does the land work. So now because they are sellers, they are commercial, they don't know they don't know the land. So they rent a place outside the city, and they are working the land. So they are meeting there, putting potatoes and corn, and they are trying to organize this parallel stuff. So in a new way, the Red de Saberes that Lucas is permanently last month, Lucas I think he can say something about that. The Red de Saberes has a role in this formal organization, but also in this new way of meeting and thinking about in which land they can reproduce, even if they have been like put outside as organization. So this makes me think just in about two questions that I think are important now, is and has to do with both propositions. One that has to be with art practice or art engaged practice or community-based practices in culture and cultural sphere, and tourism that have similar framework in the 90s, that had developments in the city museum, a live museum city, that are also for a lot of people the same thing. Let's say this touristic strategy or cultural strategy. So in this way, I think what we realized in some way conclude in the spaces of talking and reflecting about this, what is happening, what are we doing, and what this market can do, is that we don't have to make the choice about material or immaterial heritage in the way of a critic. So what I mean is that this perspective, when, for example, Gescultura or other practices are trying to put on value like immaterial heritage, they are not saying there is no material problem or material, it's because it is something that has a so huge significance that we need to, as you say, both of you, as you change stigma and emblema, stigma in, say, when you change perception. When you do this operation, you are not doing an operation in equal conditions of material and immaterial heritage, but you just try to be, I think it has more to do with a strategic form or of taking care of politics. I mean, it's not only to change stigma in emblema, I don't know how to say in English, or to transform these, like immaterial heritage because we are not recognized as real heritage, or to say that intercultural is enough to be a heritage. But I think it's more something now, after those years, I think it's more a need to work in both sides as a strategic. I mean, like in politics, to put hard and soft, to put something to attract and something, like hard and soft as different kind of arguments, as different kind of strategic that has to be together. So one thing it's important as an effect of so many people working and thinking about this is we decide not to be those who talk about immaterial heritage, for example, but to decide that we need to use this as a very strategic form. In the same way, they are always leaders, some of them, they are always remembering what David said once in 3 years ago in a forum over there, that they need to be a touristic market. And everyone was like, is David Harvey, how can he say you have to be a touristic market, you have to resist? And he says the only way to resist is to understand how it works, the touristic market, how, in which way you can take this, and in which way we can defend work and people in the market. So most of these that were dialectical questions about, we thought that now they are strategical to put a necessary dose for political discourse of hard and soft arguments to be there, to make it necessary to the metabolism of the city, to be recognized as a complex part of this metabolism, not only cultural, not only feeding, not only, but a very complex way to be there and to be part of this metabolism. So this is something for me was important about the way you understand, you are putting like a critical view on the heritage problem in Quito, that it's of course very important. I'm gonna stop there.
Okay, and I want to follow up with asking Gianni, as she also inserts herself into the dialogue. I mean, I forgot to mention that you have worked for a very long time on market. I mean, you tried very much to restructure markets as the European Union policies were pretty much sanitizing, cleansing, doing everything in Rotterdam. And in Rotterdam, actually, most of it was cleansed, at least in the main market, where there's new buildings. So you have an experience of what that is, right? And also what the tourism side, produces and so forth. So, please. Do you want to comment and then they will respond? Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I think like that's also I think why it's good that Anna starts speaking also first about this sort of like very delicate balance because it's quite sometimes quite I would say for me it's very dangerous to see them as oppositional forces, as like sort of like that you have the intangible and the tangible heritage, that the one is sort of like clear narrative that is politically, let's say, sort of like forced in the name of tourism, and it's like sort of like what you pointed out also, it's this idea of a sort of like understanding about what heritage is, that is sort of like homogeneous idea of heritage, versus the intangible heritage, the heritage that's always in flux, that is building itself through its conflicts and its relationship. Now, to me, they are not dialectical, because the problem I think is if we think them dialectical, then we can only choose a side. And I think like what's happening on the San Roque market, it's something, and Anna probably remembers by only 2 weeks that I've been there, I already saw it coming, that group would fall apart, because within that group, they couldn't sort of like find a consistent positioning towards that dominant narrative, because they were trying to build another competitive narrative towards the dominant narrative. And it is in that competition that you probably lose a lot, or you get splinter groups. You get groups that say like, oh, but we know that if we do partly this, if we lose the informals outside, we become strong enough to become that, to survive our thing. So in order for them to understand, I think we have to try to sort of like think across that dialectic position, and also really truly think, okay, is there a way in which some of the need for Quito to celebrate its heritage, to be embedded with that constant flux of the changing of the intangible narrative. And there, I think, it is also for practitioners, I think, and that was something that I noticed, that all of you then say, okay, the social engagement art practice is lying with side to side to the struggle. The question is, where is the struggle? So that is, I think, so maybe a very interesting position would be to start working on the other side, to start trying to figure out how that UNESCO narrative can be deconstructed, for instance.
Yeah, I think
just as a question.
Yeah. When I was looking at, when I was using this intangible heritage approach, of course there's intangible heritage, and we all know there's aspects of heritage, patrimonio, that are not, we can't materialize. But what I'm looking at and interested in is the way in which that approach becomes leveraged by these international agencies in order to just to dominate. I mean, it's saying, well, okay, if only the monumental is heritage, then, well, we can only focus on buildings. But if we have intangible heritage recognized, well, then we can use this to carve out more space for us to call heritage and to appropriate. I mean, this is a very, do you know what I mean? That's the way I was looking at this idea of the kind of, the expansion of heritage is not for the people necessarily to say, we recognize everything you do as heritage. It's for, in a way, it's for accumulation. It's to accumulate like it's cultural accumulation, if that makes sense. But I agree that that these are not neat oppositions, and we can't we can't set up an either like inside outside narrative. not within the market, nor within approaches to heritage, nor within artistic practice. Do you have any?
Yeah, I'll just pick up on your comment when the taking care of politics.
Mm.
That's a lens that fascinated me from the beginning, is how you trace a political agenda with the urban struggles and the market struggles. And for me, that was my entry point for my proposition, because I think taking care of politics requires that building of awareness first into a situation in order to get to being able to start to understand the situated struggles of the different markets. When we had that market leader, which clearly more made that struggle between them, and just to understand that need to bring a collective awareness, and because it allowed us to get out of the lens of Mercado San Roque and into the other market spaces of the city, who are also dealing with these same compound inequalities and injustices in different spaces, but to also just see the powers of a certain political and economic agenda that continues to compound the different disconnections between them two. So it was just a matter of building that collective awareness between different markets, or just to start to hone in on a proposition that kind of addressed that, in order to get out of the individualness of saying that this proposition or something is just for this one market, but if you want to take care of politics and for any policy recommendation or something, how do you